Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
Good evening, and happy Sunday. I'm Crystal L. Gunn, and welcome to another episode of Amazing Women Speak. And thank you to those of you who have been riding with us from the beginning, and welcome to those of you who have just found us in season 4. Stick around, though. I promise you, you will be inspired. And while you're getting settled in for this episode, hit the share button and share Amazing Women Speak so your friends and followers can get in on this conversation. And another great conversation is about to be had. So what about those masks we wear? Some to protect ourselves, some so we can conform to societal expectations, and many masks are worn out of our fear of being truly seen. But what happens when we take off the mask and allow our authentic selves to shine? What happens when we shed the layers of pretense, letting go of the need to please others and embracing who we are at our core? It's a powerful freedom. And it comes with authenticity and living unapologetically in our truth. So let's talk about removing the mask, a path to liberation. But you know the drill. Before we do that, I have to bring on my BFF and thank her 1,000 times for saying yes to Amazing Women Speak and yes to my yesterday full of birthday joy. So welcome, my friend. How are you?
Hello. Good evening, all. It is a joy to be here with you. Riding on the high of yesterday will make today even more special. For those who do not know, November 29th was my BFF's birthday. And we've been blessed with her amazing for 56 years. And I look forward to what this year is coming. Own all of them because you look incredible. I'm excited for this conversation tonight. And we cannot have this conversation without inviting some dope women into it. As you know, every week I say it is the fastest hour of our day. And so just like every other week, we will not spend time in shallow waters. We're going to go deep and we're going to have the conversations that need to be had so that we can talk about the power of removing the mask. So let's bring in our guests. Kimberly, come in and introduce yourself.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am Kimberly Phillips. I am a financial wellness coach and consultant. I know me and Crystal Gunn straight 20 in that area. And my company is Blueprint Wealth Strategies, but my brand right now and my organization is Healing Your Money. And I coach people to have a better relationship with their money.
I love it. Thank you. Welcome. Look forward to learning more about you and hearing your incredible story. Carlita, please join us and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Carlita Williams, and I am the owner and founder of Mockery Zero Proof. In addition to being the director of strategic initiatives and strategies for the DPL Foundation.
Welcome. Look forward to learning about Mockery Zero Proof. So let's dive into this conversation. Before you came on, I was saying and reminding our guests, is anybody getting feedback?
Yep, I think it's Carlita.
Is it me?
So if you have yourself on 2 devices, just mute.
I don't know why I'm giving feedback. I don't have another device on.
Nope.
Technology will try to get a hold of us, but we will not be defeated, as always. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Whatever platform you are listening from, please be a part of this conversation. Drop your questions, your comments in the chat. We would love to pull you in and hear your voices through this format. So this conversation really is about the masks that we wear and how to lead it to liberation. And I want to do some level setting. And I want to talk about how we hold the word liberation. It's one of those words that's really out there right now. And oftentimes the word can get overused. So just for some level setting for folks, please, both of you, tell me what comes to mind and heart for you when you hear the word liberation. Kimberly.
Oof. Wow. I would say for me, Michelle, it's the common thought would be freedom, right? But for me, it is the deepest freedom that you can achieve at the most authentic level without the approval of other people in every aspect of your life.
So I'm going to ask each of us to do this just to try to get through this part of this tech issue. So if you're not speaking, mute yourself, and hopefully that will help with some of the feedback. And Kimberly, I'm going to invite you to repeat as best you can what you shared.
Okay. When I think of liberation, I think of liberation from the perspective of not just a freedom from a surface level, but I think of it from a freedom of all layers where you can get to your most authentic self of existence, and that it is not attached to anything or anyone for you to exist. And that is in every aspect, in work, in money, in relationships, in your physical, in every part of yourself, being the most authentic self at every layer of you, and being liberated in that, and it not be defined by anything or anybody other than you and God, for me as a Christian, because I know we can have an audience that may not be.
Which is true. And, right, like our audience is clear that we ride hard on our faith on this platform. And we lift him and call his name without apology.
There you go.
Absolutely. So Carlita, talk to us. What resonates? What do you hear? What do you feel when you think about liberation?
Honestly, liberation for me has always meant, because again, I always say that my life has looked like in my younger years, having these feelings, thoughts, and engagements with things that I didn't yet have a name or a concept for. But them being things that were very much so things that were coloring my world. And so liberation for me was something that began very, very early. And so I still hold it in the same way that I held it then, which was being released. And being released from things that were beyond my control because they existed in the hearts, minds, thoughts, wishes, and desires of others who either were a part of my life and directly connected to me, or who I'd chosen to bring into my life. And those who I've chosen have taught me just as many lessons about liberation being a release. Because in many ways, I've wanted to be liberated all my life. And so it has very much so looked like, because I wanted it so badly, I consistently called in situations, people, and occurrences that forced me to live up to that wish and desire. So that is what it meant to me then, and it still means to me now, to literally release.
So let's start right there. I'm going to invite you to come back on, but I'm asking you to put yourself on mute for a second. So I really love the word released, right? Like it's a process, right? Freedom we think of as a state of being, a state of existence. So I like the word released because it required you to go through something, right? It requires you to do something, to open your hands, open your mind, whatever it is, right? And so you talked about you discovered that early. And so a lot of our listeners, right, like we're still in the struggle trying to figure out, trying to get over. And one of the things I ask our guests to really think about is walking us through that part of their journey, right? Because it's easy to hear somebody's overcome story and say, that sounds good, but how did you get there, right? Like what steps did you take? And to recognize that liberation was your birthright, right? And that you very early discovered that there were things you want to be released. How did you get there? And when you talk about early on, like at what stage, teenage, early teens, young adult, at what point did you recognize that? And how did you get through that?
So it's so interesting to me that I think the most common question I get is, how did you get there and how did you realize that so early? And I will quite simply say that um, because I didn't have a choice. Um, when I was very young, I would say the first time that, again, I recognized, I of course didn't know the word liberation. I just knew the feeling of wanting to be released or seeing other people live their lives and saying to myself, I wish that they could be released. And that is what created that feeling and that engagement for me. But it is also what created my deep, deep love for women being released. Because as a young girl, starting at the age of like 6 or 7, I was just consistently put in front of these women who I just viewed as absolutely amazing. Um, Being held onto, right? Held captive by someone, even if it was not a literal physical, captivity, it was mental, it was emotional. Whether they were being held by these standards or ideas that were being oppressed upon them, and this came through mother, aunts, friends of mother, friends of friends who would be around, and just watching their engagements with their significant others, just hearing the things that they were saying. And they just didn't, as a child, they just didn't sound like they were very happy about the way they were speaking about their lives. They didn't sound like they were joyful. They didn't sound like they were happy. They didn't sound like they were. And then when I became an adolescent girl, I began to be able to conceptualize this a little more. And that's where I believe the steps started to take place. Because it was at that point in my life that I said to myself, no one is going to release you, right? No one is going to release you from these things that you feel are holding you. So you have to figure out how it is that you break through this, because no one is just going to open that door and say, okay, there you go. You're free to go from all of these things that are holding you. So it looked like me having to continuously, I mean, even today, right? Because I think you're constantly releasing yourself from things, because whether we realize it or not, even if it's the things that come to us in our best wishes, there are always some things inside of that that begin to hold us. Expectations that begin to hold us is an ongoing process. But some of my simplest steps was that I started to write about it. I started to write about what I was seeing. I started to write about what I was experiencing. And from young teenage girls who were friends of mine, we were having these very deep conversations about what was happening to them inside of their relationships, how the guys were treating them. And now looking back on it as a grown woman, it's like really letting myself get grounded by the fact that I was talking to women between the ages of 15 to 17 years old who were having these very deep, I mean, tearing away at them relationships with their fathers, with uncles, with cousins, with friends, like all of these things. So I just started writing it down and trying to figure out like what would release them, what could possibly release them. And then just trying to offer them words from what I wrote down or what would come to me and what would release them. And where I am concerned personally, I just started to look at my life as, what am I allowing to hold me? Because that's another thing that I was doing. Like, what was I willingly allowing to hold me? And what were some of the things that were holding me as a result of me not approaching them and slaying that dragon, right? And saying to myself, what is it that's actually doing this? And that's really, really hard. And I always tell people, I did not get to this point in life happy, accepting, joyful or any of that. It's a very painful process, because releasing yourself means that you have to name someone as your captor. And in doing so, that may look like someone who should not in any way, shape, or form be believed to be that way, whether it's by perception of placement in life by society. But you have to call those things out. And when you do, understanding that you're not only going to stir the pot, you're going to ruffle some feathers, you're going to upset some individuals. And my daughter, just today, we were talking about this, the movie. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's a Disney movie, and it was the family who came together and they had this deep secret, and come to find out the secret they were hiding was that they weren't this perfect family, and all these things in the background. Encanto, was that it? I can't remember what it was. But the steps that I took were becoming responsible for my own release, no matter how ugly that looked, no matter how much I had to accept that there were things that were happening around me that were not okay to people that I love very deeply. And then as I became a 20 and 30-year-old woman, it looked like really calling it out and saying, no, this is what I've been watching. This is what's been happening. And honestly, just not shutting up about it. And as my father would always say, I have been burning bras in his living room since I was 5 years old and trying to lead revolutions in his household all my life. And I was just born that way. I was just like, I love it. I was just born that way. So yeah, but I mean, steps would really look like just being extremely brutally honest with myself.
Yeah, the power in naming, right, is so critical. And there's nothing more challenging to reckon with than a Black woman who has found her voice, right? And so to get to liberation, to get to freedom, there's this journey that we take. And Kimberly, you talked about your relationship with God, and there was a point where you recognized that you were in covenant with him, right? And you were going to hold him accountable to the things that he said were true. But before that point, you wore a mask to get through the things that you went through in your life, right? Before you said, nope, I'm going to stand on his promises to me, and I can remove this mask and the world will see and accept me for who I am. Talk to us about the mask that you wore for survival, for society's sake, for the many reasons oftentimes we put a mask on before you get to sharing your liberation story. Talk to us about your journey.
So, as a young infant, my mother, I was born in Detroit, and my mom was, I think, 20 when she had me. She already had my older sister. She was 17 when she had her. And so when she had me, the setup at that time wasn't great. And so she gave me up for adoption to her aunt down south in Alabama. And so I was raised in that family with my biological cousins, but raised as sisters and brothers. And so off the rip, I kind of was leaned into a space where I didn't grow up with my birth mom, and no one told me that she existed. And so by the time I had gotten to down south and grew up with my parents and my siblings, it was a home that was voiceless, actually. Liberation didn't even exist on no day, on no level. Secrets were our primary source of moving. Suffering in silence was our primary source of moving. Not upsetting the equilibrium in the home was our primary source of moving. And so we grew up making sure that the adults were okay. We grew up adult-centric, but not child-centered. So it was a lot of neglect emotionally. I don't think my parents had the capacity. They just didn't. And there wasn't an attunement, right? So attunement happens very early where the environment that you grow up in, so age 0 to 18 months are the first critical environments, is where you learn vibrations, is where you learn energy, is where you learn feelings. And people think, oh, they're just a baby. They don't, it's all happening very early, and you're internalizing it very early. So if you grew up in a home with fighting, with an alcoholic grandfather, beating my grandmother, my father, also violent. He was a disciplinarian, is what he would call it, but he learned that from his dad. And so it was a lot of chaos. It was a lot of chaos. And so when you grow up with that, you turn into what I think is now the coined word of being a people pleaser. All right. But you're not pleasing people at all. You're really just in survival mode, looking for love in all the right places, trying to have your voice merge with someone else's voice, because that was the only permission that you were given, to merge into with someone else's voice, someone else's opinion of you. Even if you thought you had a different opinion of you, if someone was louder, if they knew their voice well, if they were liberated, that platform took over the true you, because you merged into it, because you came up voiceless. And so by the time I got into my 20s and gotten through college and got a job and all of these things, I did all the things that the culture told me to do. I went to school, I got a degree, I got a job, a good job. And that's what my dad used to say, you need to keep that good job at the bank. So I was hired at the bank. I did great. I excelled well. I was being promoted, but I was powerless while being promoted. I was powerless in my own world. I could acquiesce. I could rescue people at very high levels, but I was dying at each season that I was in, from high school to college to career to trying to date. And it was showing up in all of my relationships. And so that liberation did not really come until much later. I just celebrated 51 in October. And my liberation probably didn't start happening until my 40s. And it wasn't because anybody gave me permission. It's because my body started to shut down and nothing that I was doing was working. And I got up one day at my office and I got ready to move and walk. And I didn't have the use of my legs. I didn't have the use of my legs. And I go to the doctor faithfully. I got a clean bill of health every year, took all my blood work, all my urine samples, all the things that they tell you to do. But what I had was not X-rayable, CT scannable, MRIable. It wasn't blood workable. They weren't going to find it. They weren't going to find the abandonment that I had stored in my body and the masking for survival, right? So I think when people hear mask, they think, oh, you're putting something on so you don't show your true self. Well, for me, the masking was an internal thing that just happened to show up on the outside, because I wasn't even aware of who I was, let alone being able to share the world with the world and authentic Kimberly. And so once I got sick, that's when I took a pause and I said, it's something else going on here. And I had wonderful family, friends, a village of people. My parents tried to do what they could, but they were very oblivious to the condition I was in. You know, people can, as you say, loose wrist you, and they'll tell you to pray about it, and they'll tell you to go into your prayer closet, and Jesus is on the main line telling what you want. And I was telling them and dying at the same time. And so I wasn't connected in a way where the liberation was going to be available to me, because I was in relationship with other maskers. So you can't get liberated if you're in relationship and moving with other maskers. And so the fight, I was literally, as the kids say, how the young people say, I was fighting for my life. I really, really was. And so after after years of trying to explore, why do I feel dysregulated if I go out into a social environment? Why do I feel that I have to look a certain way and talk a certain way? Why do I feel that I am so unseen and so unheard? Why do I feel like I got to agree with this conversation, even if I don't? These were things that I had started to explore out of the default that there was nothing else available to me and nothing else was working, and I was getting physically sick from harboring the mask. It just happened to manifest itself internally, and externally I did not have a place to land. I didn't have a place to land. And so eventually, after a lot of research, the internet make you think you're gonna live forever or die tomorrow. It ain't no in between. After a lot of research and crying out and surrendering, and Carlita said it, you gotta identify your captor. That pierced me. I almost fell out this chair. Listen, you got to identify your captor. Even though you're not held in physical captivity, there is a stronghold, right? And you don't have to be strong in a stronghold, but nobody told us that. So when you identify your captor as your home environment, your parents' lack of capacity, their inability to see you and to do anything and protect you, their inability to keep you safe and not exposed and so vulnerable to people who drop you or things that drop you or culture that drops you. You got to identify that origin. But once you can identify that, you still have to do the work, because the liberation is an ongoing space. We'll be doing this until we go into the ground.
Absolutely.
Not because we are just so jacked up, but because each version of you deserves a level of liberation. And it's a level that you haven't identified yet. So you have to be available to the levels of the liberation and disconnect from maskers when your voice is not being heard.
I love that you just said that we'll be doing this thing until we go into the ground, right? Sometimes I think people think, okay, well, I'm gonna go get into therapy and I'm gonna do these therapy sessions, I'm gonna do 5 therapy sessions and I'm gonna be good. Or I'm gonna write in my journal and then I'm gonna be good. But one of the things that I've noticed is there's levels to this thing, right? So you figure out the first thing and you heal the first piece, right? And then you go to something else and you heal that piece and something else and then something else. But then you thought this piece down here that you were healed from, you realize, well, wait, I'm not totally healed from there. But you couldn't start to heal, you couldn't finish healing that piece until you heal some other levels and some other things. And I think in that you do have to start giving yourself some grace that you being held captive isn't something that you chose, it's something that happened to you. Now, I always have this question. I think everything happens for a reason, and not knowing the reasons. And this is really to both of you. Like the journeys that you've had, if there wasn't the captors to begin with, do you think you would be living the life that you live now and doing the things, empowering others? Would you be doing that had you never gone through the storm?
Absolutely. And I'm a person who, like you, believes that everything happens for a reason. But I think that I believe it in a way that is a lot more, I guess I might call it dark. But dark, I'm one of those people that believes that darkness and light, like they have to coexist, right? In all things in life, in all things that live, breathe, eat, touch, taste, and smell. And whether, a lot of times we want to accept it or believe it or not, I feel that I think a lot of times we talk about things, but we don't talk about them in complete sentences. We speak to them from just kind of like sound bites. And so we'll walk around and proudly say, everybody is born with a purpose. Everybody is born. Everybody has a place here. There is something. You are meant to be something great. You are meant to be something amazing. And that may very well be true. The other truth inside of that is that you were not born the person you are meant to become. You are born the person who has that assignment. You were born the person who has that desire. You were born the person who, depending on how you believe life goes, if you believe in afterlives and things like that, past lives, but you were brought here as an energetic being who had wishes and desires over your life and what your path looked like here as you began this iteration in this human vessel. And in order for that to happen, not unlike anything, whether you're trading for a decathlon or whether you're deciding that, you want to pass an exam in order to get a professional position, at the beginning of your training for either one of those things, you could not pass the end. I was a lover of Zelda as a kid, and I related to life quite often. And it is that as you moved around each board and you went to each level, you'd go through many villages, you'd go through multiple challenges, and at each one, you'd have to learn a different technique. And at each one, you'd receive different weapons. And those things would allow you, because you couldn't go to that next board and beat anyone in that board or find your way through anything until you picked up these, what I call breadcrumbs or weapons or whatever it is. And as you picked up each one of those, it takes me to how I view life. And there's a movie called Sliding Doors that when I saw it, I was like, somebody stole my life idea. I used to read those books where you'd get to a page and it would be like, oh, to get on the train, turn to page 45. If you'd like to wait for the next train, keep reading. And that is what I believe life is, where we are consistently met with these things, these items, these occurrences, these opportunities to go down a different trail, to go down a different venture. But no matter what, the things that are going to meet us, there are some that are just like non-negotiables. I know for a fact I could not be the remedy that I am had I not encountered the poison that I had to. Because if you don't know the poison, how can you ever figure out the remedy? If you don't know and you know it up front, right, and personal, it's very easy to speak to someone from up here, right, that high level of what you believe should be true or what would be ideal. There's something very different when you're talking to and you know it when you're listening to a person or you're talking to a person and you can tell that they genuinely, can we cuss on here? Okay. So, okay. And you can tell that they've genuinely been through some shit. Like they're not just telling you from this picture perfect, in my highest image of no, like they've been through some shit. And they're telling you from that perspective and from that point of view. And so I know I would not be who I am at all. Every negative experience, every wound, every pain, every time life crumbled and I was forced to rebuild it, every time I was reimagining my life, I was reimagining myself, I was recreating myself. I could not be who I am without those things. And it's like the good things are good, and you appreciate them when they come. But the challenges, the things that feel like they are burning us alive sometimes, are the things that turn us into formidable forces because they hand us those weapons for that next level. They make us something. And there are some people who skip levels and they believe that they belong at level 5 when really they only have the weaponry for level 2. And then they come across a real ass level 5 and shit changes. So no, I know I couldn't be. And as many times people have asked me, like, would you go back and would you change it? I'm like, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. And if younger me saw me today, would she say, oh, Carlita, I would probably not.
Yeah, so I'm with Carlita on that one, definitely. I feel and believe that when you do this life and this journey, right? Because we are all created in his image and his likeness. I recently, in my most recent years of trying to increase my relationship, and when I say increase, what I mean is I wanted a deeper relationship with Christ. I knew how to go to church and I knew how to do church, but I didn't know how to do a full-blown relationship, that intimate space with me and him. And so one of the things that I tried to do was study more around Jesus's later years, the last 3.5 years of his ministry, and understand what his real plight was. And so what his real plight was at that time was he truly was liberating people. He was pulling them from a place of sin. He had followers, not Instagram followers, but he truly had followers that were in alignment with his mission. He sent them out to go and teach, sent them to nations, sent them 2 by 2. But then he also, was betrayed by Judas. Peter was just off the chain, cutting off ears, denying him left and right. His cousin, John the Baptist, got his head cut off. He gone. These are things where you think to yourself, if somebody cut off my cousin's head, I would be devastated, right? So he experienced things in a very human body, but he also stayed in the likeness of his father, his image. So here's what I believe. We came into this world in his likeness and in his image. Where we got dropped along the way, where we got poisoned along the way, where we were mismanaged at the hands of other people along the way, never changed, right? Why we were even entered into this space, right? My prayer constantly is, God, don't let me leave this earth without getting back to that authentic, pure person that exists in spite of or underneath all of this other stuff. Did it shape me? Absolutely. Am I able to be powerful and empower? Yes, I am. But I'm also understanding that when he went to that cross for us, went for us. He was saying, I believe in what you are so strong that I'm willing to do this. So if he can liberate us from that level, the magnitude of going to the cross, for me, that means taking this journey, taking my poison, taking my hits, but the baseline wasn't ever supposed to be corroded by that. It was a part of the journey, right? When I look at how, my God, you talk about therapy. I'm at my 5th therapist. I started therapy when I was 26 years old, and I'm at my 5th therapist. And the other day I was in my therapy session and I was frustrated and I was told I was tired and I don't understand why this is not moving faster. And she said, well, Kim, so my mother passed away, my life mother that raised me, and my adoptive mother, she passed away in February. And she said, well, this Kim ain't never been in therapy. And I said, what Kim? She said, the grieving Kim. She ain't never been in therapy, because I kept telling her, I've been in therapy. I've been doing this, because, we will grade our own paper. She was like, but this Kim hadn't been in therapy. A grieving Kim hadn't been in therapy. Michelle Harper is a personal trainer. I trained with her for 2 months. I think I cried 48 of the 60 days that we were together. Every session I was boohooing because I was grieving so bad. So she was like, why can't you give yourself permission to be this Kim, this grieving Kim at this moment? Okay? Because she still has a path to pass through the grief, but not necessarily forcing me to move on, but forcing me to access myself differently. So as long as I keep accessing at each level, as you say, and we get tools at each level, as you say, there is no way we're going to ever really deviate from that point of origin of what his design was. And I just can't keep saying, well, God, give me a sign. I've got an assignment. I don't need an assign. I don't need a sign. I got an assignment. And that is just giving, coming through. What portal we travel it through, how we do it, whether we're trainers, coaches, consultants, social workers, whatever we are, at the core nucleus of our heart is to make sure that he is glorified and that we continue to access the spaces that he designed inside of us to travel through this journey, but to truly liberate others through our liberation, with him being the point of origin, no matter what the culture or people have done to us. Now, I don't know if I answered the question, but I felt like that was a good answer.
Whatever the question was.
Whatever it was.
Absolutely. Kimberly, nobody will ever argue when you bring the man into the room. Like, who can argue with that?
Yeah, and I hate to sound like a preacher, but it's the only reason I'm here. He saved me.
Don't hate to speak your
It's the only
truth.
reason I'm here. It's the only reason
Don't
I'm
hate
here.
to speak your truth. Right. Like, so oftentimes we know people, or we ourselves have lived in what I call open air prisons, right? The comforts of life will keep us in a place that's not meant to serve us, right? We will wear a mask that we know is uncomfortable and doesn't fit where we want to go or how we're truly feeling. And yet that comfort, right? Like, we will hold on to, I'm going to dance with the devil I know. Yeah. That whole concept, right? And so we are living in open air prisons. We could free ourselves if we chose to, right? Like, we could be liberated from those, and yet, right? There's a cost. Yep. There's a cost. Even if it's ultimately going to serve us, there's a cost. Carlita, talk to us about your cost of the release, the cost of liberation for you.
Well, in order to talk about that, I have to address one thing first, and that is that there is also something to be said. There are individuals, I believe, and I believe myself to be one of those individuals, who is not born with a mask and don't live life. They're never afforded the privilege that a mask sometimes can bring. And that can look like consistently not fitting in, because, as you said, when everyone is in an open air prison and not knowledgeable of being in an open air prison, you can become an irritant. You can become a thing that they begin to despise. You can become a forced outsider. You can become this thing they just wish would go away, because you consistently bring up the things they don't want to talk about, the things they don't want to hear. And there were many moments where I wish I had a mask, where I wished that, and I would say to my husband, I wish I could be more like you. I wish that I could just go to fucking work and shut up. Like, I wish that I could just, like, live this life, like, come home, go to bed, wake up, like, and watching people live, and that you crave it because you are so tired of being this person consistently feeling forced almost into this space of being an example, into this space of not, you just don't have it. You just don't. All the time as a child and through my life, from partners, from family members, I would hear, you just don't know when to shut up. You just don't know when enough is enough. You always take it. And so that's why when I heard you say, this is where we go deep, I said, oh shit, I'm in the right crowd. Because this is, hey, hey, I'm the person that'd be in the grocery store with you, like, do you know why you picked up that cauliflower? Did you ask yourself why you picked that over the broccoli? Like, did you ever and there are moments, and there have been moments in my life consistently, daily, where I'm like, I just wish I could stop examining things, just looking at them and wanting, I would just like to press that numb, easy feeling button where I just go into autopilot like I watch so many people do. Because while I know that shit is horrible, I also know there are certain things they are not having to experience or feel. So what I would say is I at many points in my life felt like the bird flying over the open air prison. Like, caw, like, it's open, my dude. Like, I'm saying this because it's open. Like, I'm calling out to you, like, like, I'm trying to let you know you can hear me because there's nothing over you. And you can, because think about it, who do you fight the most when you're, as Kimberly was saying, when you're going to doctors and they're telling you like there's nothing wrong, they're running all of these tests that 100% support the physical body but have no real knowledge of the somatic experience of the soul and its experience, and as it's walking through things of the connection with the soul and the body. And if you have individuals who are more connected to the soul's experience, who are not as bogged down inside of the body and as things are, well, you throw a rock at that bird. Like you literally throw a rock at that bird because you tired of them, like reminding you, because no matter how you look at it, if you can look up, you know that you are in fact in an open air prison, but you don't want to look up. Because looking up means the sun gets in your eyes and you get blinded and you get forced to figure out how to make sunglasses. And you are now forced to figure out how to climb high enough. So yeah, that's what that has looked like for me. Through my life, I have at times been envious of people in that open air prison.
Yeah, it's cost me my family. I'm hardly in any relationship with my siblings at this point. It is a choice that I have made. It has cost me to be a risk taker. I was very risk averse. Unlike Carlita, I grew up just very voiceless, and I would go along to get along and merge into other people's worlds. So when now I want to have a voice, it's costing me a lot of discomfort in my body, a dysregulated nervous system, costing me for people, they want to push me back down now. I've had a sibling tell me, well, your narrative, you can't push your narrative on everybody. I said, well, I'm not pushing it on everybody, but I'm not going to be heard either. Well, that was new, right? Because Kim was going to go along to get along. She was going to be the happy Kim. She was going to be the Kim that everybody felt better. And so it cost me my family. It cost me a transition in my body, because my body was so used to holding and internalizing what was being left unsaid. Then when I was trying to make a transition, it went into survival mode. And it was like, what are you doing? Wait, we don't know. We're not comfortable over here. What? You about to speak up? What? You about to have a boundary? It would literally go into a shake. And so it was costing me my health. It was costing me my ability to be authentic. So there's this book I read, and it talked about the adaptive self and the authentic self. It describes the adaptive self as, so Crystal, let's say it's me and you. We're 8, 9 years old. We're on the playground. I know they don't do that anymore, but we're outside playing on recess, and a kid scrapes their knee, and you go and help the kid and get a first aid kit. And the teacher says, oh my God, Crystal, you're such a good helper. You're such a good helper. And they take you in and they say, hey, help me with the classroom. Help me with these books. And then I'm on that same playground and I'm organizing a kickball tournament. And the teacher sees me and says, oh my God, Kim, you're such a great leader. You come in, you become the hall monitor today. And so these narratives start being pushed. And then someone else sees that, and they continue to give you the path that they see that is more of a benefit to them. They didn't see you on the playground when you were helping the kid and say, Crystal, you should be a nurse. They said you should be a helper. So then the authentic self wants to be the nurse. And she comes out because she's like, this helper thing ain't helping me. So it goes to the authentic self, and it says, if you have not been given and driven in a space where the most authentic self has had a path to thrive, and you've been adaptive, your authentic self will come out in a rage and ready to fight. And that was me. So it cost me grieving my adaptive self because she kept me in survival mode. And people always talk about, what would you say to your younger self? I don't talk to her no more. I talk to the 65-year-old. And she's like, bitch, get it together. Okay? We're not going to keep on this path. All right? We're not going to keep on this path. So it costs you to grieve your former self. But there is something waiting for you. For
So
sure.
powerful. So powerful. Both of your stories and the journey that brought you to liberation, to freedom, to releasing. So very powerful. And we're so very grateful for your vulnerability, to share that with us, to share that with our listeners. That gave us an opportunity to discover the power of liberation and the cost of the mask and the cost of not having the privilege of being able to hide behind. So very, very powerful. And like I said, this is the fastest hour of our day. And we got to learn a little bit about you, and absolutely want to hear, as we begin to wind this conversation down, how that journey, how these life experiences have landed you to the hats that you wear and the way that you walk through this world as a contributor, right? In the seats that you hold. I really do want to hear about Mockery Zero Proof.
So quite honestly, it made me very comfortable with being on the outside. And that made me very comfortable with believing in my wild ideas, dreams, and being very comfortable with listening to my own voice. Going back to your first question, like mockery came because I had spent so much of my life following myself, because when I would say something, other people would look at me like I was insane. And I just became very, very comfortable with the idea of, you know what? Because I would watch other people do things and I'd be like, I said that. Like, I said that. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't you stop saying it and like waiting, for other people to like agree or using them as soundboards? And why don't you just start like doing what you want to do? And that's what I did. And mockery came to me. I always say mockery is not mine. Mockery was never meant to be a business. Mockery was one of my most recent healing journeys that I was on inside of quarantine. And I was literally in the bathroom. I had decided I was gonna like lower how much I was drinking. I never drank a ton. I was a social drinker at best. But at the end of the day, it was like, but why am I inside of this space? I'm literally locked in my home, and I've talked to all these people, and we've all said like, oh my gosh, if I just had my life to myself, if I just do what I wanted to, if I had more time at home, I would be the president. But here we all were like clinging to normalcy, just trying to continue the same. And it came to me, the name, what it was going to be, why it needed to happen. I always say that I am obedient to the creator. Whenever something comes through, I am obedient. I may not at first understand, and I did not understand with mockery at the beginning as to why I was being called to turn it into a business and an offering. And that was the moment that I realized that it was less of a business and more of a mission. And inside of that, it looked like standing it up. And so the mission of mockery is to allow people to begin to engage with their truest selves, being as present as they can, which is wildly hard in today's world, especially with social media and everything else, begging for our attention. Being present is literally like a luxury, and having people be present with you is like a luxury. And alcohol, speaking of masks, only served as a mask in many cases. Uh, a lot of people will apologize. Like, I met people in my 3 years of non-alcoholic bartending who would tell me like, yeah, I'm trying, and they would start beating themselves up. And I'm like, don't do that. You live in a place where you were indoctrinated into this tradition. At the point that you turn 21, the very first thing people hand you is, oh, you can drink now. Like, that's what you get. Like, you don't get, oh, you can do this. Oh, you can form an LLC. Oh, you can form, that's not what you get. You get, oh, you can drink. And so it's not anyone's fault that they were born into this tradition. And at the point that they decide to go off and figure out what that looks like on the other side of that, speaking to Kimberly's point, like when their bodies are telling them, like, I hear people saying, yeah, when I drink, like, I feel like this, I feel like that. But nobody was, setting it down or letting it go, because you hear everyone talk about an open air prison. You hear everyone, like, hangover is common. It's so common that it's societally accepted. It's acceptable. Like, people create hangover bags that they take on their, bachelorette weekends for people who are going to be attending them with them. Like, it got ingrained into our lives and society. And here's the other thing, like, there's nothing wrong with having an alcoholic beverage at all. There is also an opportunity to have more options. And so that's what Mockery is. It's more options. And so the shop itself is built on the idea of individuals coming in to come together, to speak, to engage, to have moments where they are simply themselves, right? Go on a date. I love them. I love them. Then a couple months down the road, they are not who I met. You are right. They are not who they met. They had on the mask of 5 Cosmopolitans and 2 Mike's Hard Lemonades and 3 Long Island iced teas. They were not, in fact, who you met. And that's fine. But that's what Mockery is. The mission behind it is creating elevated, zero-proof cocktails. The bottle shop itself is for folks to come in who are adults, who want to go beyond that idea of soda and a mixer and all that sugar, and come in and see what it looks like to find out about zero-proof non-alcoholic spirits. But the main mission is for people to fall in love with themselves in a way that they never have, and connecting with others in a very genuine way, and being extremely present.
Where is the shop?
It is located at 7400 West McNichols. I am sitting right in the footsteps of U of D Mercy. Right there in that corridor, that historic corridor with other neighborhood favorites like Detroit Sip. I am 2 doors down from that, but I sit right on the corner with the Aaliyah mural on the side of the building. Soft opening was yesterday. It was absolutely amazing. Really excited to continue to bring it. Did a Friendsgiving that was completely, alcohol free. And even on my Instagram, I just stood and recorded the room. I just got a sound bite of the room and put it up on my social media. And I said, want to know what a party full of adults with no alcohol sounds like? It sounded amazing. It was beautiful. There was laughing, there was talking, there was chattering, like all those things, like bringing people out of this tradition, to create a new one, to create a new tradition, to create a new way, to create some new options. And that's what it's about.
I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. What a powerful way of redefining social gatherings. Thank you for that. So, Kimberly Phillips, healing through finances, especially as we get ready to go into the holiday season, where we often spend what we do not have to make people happy who do not know how to be happy with the things that they're given anyway. How and why were you called to that space?
So healing your money came through watching us suffer. And watching our financial decisions suffer at the hands of trauma. And it doesn't have to be childhood trauma. It could just generational trauma. We can just start with that. So this year I decided that I would start back coaching clients because I've been a financial coach, but it was just really hard. People didn't want to pay. People didn't want to do. It was just hard. And so I got out of that and kind of went into workshops and corporate wellness. And then I circled back this year to coaching clients. And I just had women of all ages who would get on calls with me. We're trying to work through the budget, but they are crying. I'm asking them some very tough questions. Why are you spending money that you don't have? Why are you in this relationship that is abusive and still trying to pour money into it? What is driving that? And so asking some really, really tough questions. I want to help people rewrite their financial story and then go from moving singular. Once you get your stuff together, then can that trickle to your family? And then once you get that together, can we get to the village? Because ultimately, each generation of us is starting over. The kids shouldn't be in debt the way we're in debt. It's just insane. And so we're just not having the tough conversations that we need to have to understand why trauma or why Programming, learned programming is showing up in your money decisions. Money solves money problems. Emotional solutions solve emotional problems. They don't solve each other. And right now we are using them to solve the other one. And we are in dire straits. And so I believe, and so healing your money birthed out of a God calling who showed me I have to, or he needs me to, in a level of obedience, take people from the place that they are in their programming and moving them to their power by unlearning what they think they know and give them new information and a new path to build wealth, but also to build health around why you do what you do.
Crystal, you shouldn't have that much joy in your face. You just shouldn't. You just shouldn't.
She is very.
So the word is clear, right? Where two or three are gathered. So Kimberly, I guess you're telling me I don't get to look pretty when I don't feel well because my money and my emotions. Fine. Fine. I hear it from Crystal all the time. But where two or three are gathered, okay, fine.
Oh, sure.
I receive. I receive. Thank you, ladies, so very much. What a powerful conversation. And despite technology not wanting us to be in a collective where that laughter and those aha moments could be heard, like you definitely could see them. Yeah. And so I'm so very grateful that we got to spend this time together, learning about each other, hearing more about what it means to release ourselves and to own this liberation that we were entitled to, that we are entitled to. And there is a path through in this ongoing journey. So thank you very much, both of you. This has been an absolute amazing conversation that absolutely could have gone on beyond the top of our hour. Crystal.
Wrong button. I have been literally nodding my head throughout this whole conversation. You two are extremely powerful, extremely amazing. I appreciate your transparency, the honesty, because it's not always easy to share your story, but somebody healed a little bit today. Somebody now has the courage to say, oh, you know what? Therapy. I'm going to go get in therapy. Somebody has the courage to say, okay, I'm not going to drink, as much as I did. And to start to climb out of that open air prison. We didn't even have to ask any questions today because you all took it and went down this was the easiest ever conversation, but I believe one of the most powerful ones. And I love it that you told your truth. I love it that you are both walking in being obedient and understanding that what God gave you to do, you're absolutely doing. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for joining us today. I am Crystal L. Gunn. I am a Black woman, and I absolutely own my amazing. Michelle?
Yes, you do, my friend. So thank you again, both of you. What a dynamic conversation this has been. Crystal, as always, as we talk about obedience, I call yours. Because of that obedience, this platform exists. And because of your obedience, you continue to change lives for women who have yet to be in a physical room with you. Your gift is undeniable. And I'm so very grateful that I get to share this platform with you every Sunday, but I get to walk through life with you. And that's the greatest gift that I could be given for a woman that I get to call my best friend. So I thank you for your obedience. And I continue to celebrate you because it was established at birth that there was something greater for you. And I look forward to what this upcoming year of your birth has. I am honored to call you my friend. Thank you all for joining us. I am beyond blessed to have been a part of this amazing conversation. Carlita, Kimberly, you are absolute powerhouses. And I'm so very grateful to have been in this space with you. I got better today. I gained some knowledge and some wisdom and some heartfelt space that I didn't think I had room to hold. And yet you gave room for me to be poured into just a little bit more. So I thank both of you. My name is Michelle Harper. I am a Black woman, and without apology, I will continue to own my amazing. Carlita.
This was absolutely awesome. I just really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, I knew I was in the right place. I always say deep is my safe word. So as soon as I hear deep, I'm like, yes, let's go. This is my kind of thing. Like, grab me a napkin because I'm about to go in. So this was wonderful. This was a great way to end an awesome weekend. Everything happens for a reason, and I believe that this happened for a reason. The day after, I stepped into the space that I am in with the brick and mortar. So this was wonderful, and it was wonderful to talk to all of you, to hear from all of you. Kimberly, yes, girl. And as you were talking, like every nod, everything, it was, trust me, it was coming from a very genuine place and space because, yes. And if no one has ever told you they see you, I see you. And appreciate that you allowed yourself to be seen. So absolutely wonderful. My name is Carlita Williams. And as Michelle said, with no apologies, with no hesitations, I will forever and always uphold, hold, and present and represent for my amazing.
I love it. Thank you, Carlita. Kimberly.
Oh my God, I'm so full. I'm doing everything not to fall on this floor. Like, you all are everything. I have so many girl crushes right now. I don't even know what to do. First of all, Carlita then gave us a bird call. That liberated me, period. Like, period. The bird call took me out. Crystal Gunn, girl, listen, happy birthday to you from our day one. We are day ones. I mean, literally from day one, you could just see and you could hear who she was through and through, without her ever even really telling me who she was. That met me before she ever really said who she was. Michelle, I've worked with her. We've shared some time and space together. Here's what I know to be true. Black women, we talk about Black women, we talk about our magic, we talk about our resilience, but what really is our superpower is our consistency in our heart space. That is our superpower. It's the consistency in our heart space. And so I'm thankful to have shared time and space with all of you. I too am better in leaving from this. I feel honored and privileged to even be put on this platform and being asked to be on this platform. My name is Kimberly Phillips. I am a Black woman, and I purely, authentically, truly liberated and unmasked own my amazing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You guys are absolutely awesome. The Amazing Women Speak podcast is sponsored by the Amazing Woman Network, which was created to unite and empower Black women globally, focusing on our core pillars of reclaiming our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, reclaiming our financial power, and increasing our social involvement. I think everybody listening got a little better today. Please find Amazing Women Speak on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Spotify, whatever your favorite platform is. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Take a look at past episodes. Look at the topics. Find the ones that speak to your soul. I promise you there will be many. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you for the newcomers and to those who tune in each and every week. We love and appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you next Sunday, where our topic will be letting go to grow, releasing what no longer serves you. Thank you so much. Have a good night.